Aches and Bruises, we are back in the building with another one. I got Vaughn Allen here with me. Vaughn Allen, you recognize him in the chat. A lot of good comments out there. I reached out to him, gave him the invite. He was kind enough to bless me with his presence. Appreciate you joining me, Allen. Yo,
Thank
Black
you
is
for having
time.
me. Your Black is Tom. Appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, we gonna get right into it. We're gonna start with your introduction. If you want to share what you do, how you became a Knicks fan, and then go right into them Knicks and bruises, and let share your story, and then we'll start talking about the current Knicks.
All right, absolutely. Well, definitely New York, born and raised, Bronx, Harlem. Um, right now, I'm into graphic design, fashion design, and we talked a little bit behind the scenes about some things we could get into. But I've been doing that for a little over 15 years, and self-taught. Got a couple of things going on in the making. You and I will definitely build on that a little bit in the near future. See what we could whip up. And as far as my Knicks fandom, man, I've been a Knicks fan since I was 8. 8 years old. They call me Young OG. I look young, but I've been around for a very long time. So, I'm very familiar with all the old head Knicks. The Bill Cartwrights, the Lewis Owens, the Rory Sparrows, the Gerald Hendersons.
All right.
Let me just not say too much. I'm giving away my age. You know what I'm talking about? But yeah, man, I'm a Knicks lover. Anytime I get a chance, I'm working. Peeking in on the game, same time peeking in on the chat, peeking in on the show. Always trying to keep Knicks love around me. My sons, I got two sons. They're now Knicks fans. You know what I mean? So we talking Knicks all day, every day. To a point where our family's like, yo, if y'all don't, you know what I mean, with these damn Knicks. So they are the other half of me. You know what I'm saying? So when I don't have what I have going on in my daily consuming me, I'm definitely tapping in to see what they doing. They are a part of my life. They're a part of everything. So they like almost family now.
That's what's up. That's what's
Yeah.
up. Shout out to your sons as well. I got a daughter, and I try to force the Knicks on her, and that might have been a mistake. She does like basketball, so that's good. Um, but she likes the Heat and Jimmy Butler as of right now.
Oh,
So
really? See
yeah,
that
I gotta
that
respect it though.
yeah,
I
that's
gotta
my thing.
respect it.
Being a basketball fan. Obviously, like I told you, I played as a youngin coming up all the way up into high school. And one of the things you do notice, when you play the game or watch the game, is people's fandom. And so, my boys, some of them are Knicks fans, some of the Lakers fans, some of them are player fans. But I have a disdain for those people that like to follow individuals from team to team, and now that's your team. Like when LeBron was on Cleveland, oh, I'm a Cavaliers fan. LeBron go to Miami, oh, I'm a Miami fan. Like, really? Okay.
Well, I respect the ones who keep it real and say, "Oh, I'm a LeBron fan." Wherever
Hmm.
he go, you know what I mean. Like if you come out and say that, then
Right.
I respect that. But the bandwagon and acting like you always been that guy
Yeah, they blow
that
like
that
the
that
wind.
I frown upon. Shout out to the chat, Stafford Don, Allen, Andy, excuse me, David L. I see you guys. Salute. Thank you guys for joining.
Words, definitely salute to the chat. I'm always in there. It gets crazy in there.
So where you want to start? Like I tell every guest, the floor is yours. You could do any combination of whichever way you want to go. Well, but let's hear some of them nicks and bruises for you in your experience.
Yeah, I think the first one probably has to be um Pat Riley not sticking around with the organization. Pat instilled this culture, instilled this attitude, instilled this thing that, it really cultivated and consumed the city from everything standpoint, from a grit, from a toughness, from an IQ. And him leaving the organization, the way he left the organization really had me sour because you almost knew there wasn't going to be anyone to come through these doors that could kind of do it like Pat did it. And as crazy as his tenure was, just in terms of his success, who knew what was going on the back end, in terms of personnel, management, players, and stuff like that. I think Chris Herron's book speaks a little bit about to some of those things going on, and those things are really, really intriguing. But not having Pat, man, really, as you know, we haven't had anything close to, I guess, maybe Van Gundy's tenure.
Hmm.
You know, that short AFC run was something that absolutely um, sticks out just in terms of the height of our powers, but not having Pat Riley and him leaving the organization at that for what would be our Miami rivalry, always, what I mean, stings.
That's tough. I, it's great how you phrased it because I that hurt me as well, and it wasn't until I got the information that it kind of it made sense. They he wanted some things that they weren't willing to give him.
Right.
You know what I mean? And at that point, when you realize that at least for me personally, my thinking changed. Shout out to New York City too, by the way.
Shout out New York.
I miss that background sometimes on some real stuff. It, they could have gave him they should have gave him what he wanted. So it made me mad more of at the front office or the organization that they didn't do what they needed to do to keep him. And,
Yeah.
and in a similar fashion, um, how bad was it when Van Gundy left the way he left? Right, like that was
That
like back to
that
back.
that hurt just as much because Van Gundy is like, I don't want to call him the coach's coach, but just in terms of who he was in the organization, you almost knew that there wasn't any figures left in the organization with his insight, with his cachet, or his how he runs the ship, how he holds people accountable. And so you almost feel like, when those two, left, we still haven't been able to get back up or build back up, that level of accountability, that level of cachet, any of those things. Jeff, I appreciate his honesty, even when he talks about, today's Knicks, when he talks about his tenure here, his gut wrenching honesty, which I love candidacy. I love honesty. And I think Jeff was one of those guys that, as small as he would step up to bat for you. He'd run through a wall for you if he had to. And I think that's what New Yorkers theoretically are all about, sticking together. And it's crazy how New York City is one of the most angry places, energy speaking or attitude wise. And when, you could get into an argument or fight 7 a.m., 8 a.m. on the train with somebody for somebody, just not having the right state of mind, my frame. And at the same time, when the Knicks are winning, you might see a glut of conversations on the subway, on the bus about the Knicks. So when the Knicks are doing well, it's a different vibe. My testament is that if the Knicks ever win the title in the modern era, New Yorkers will actually start being nice to each other. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh man, I just want to go to a parade, man.
Just
Because
talk about
I
it.
think that vibe will be a little different. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, the last
something we
parade I
never seen before.
frequented was the Giants one down on Broadway, and when I tell you it was beautiful, definitely. And it's crazy because we don't have a football team here in New York, but basketball being basketball here in New York, and the modern era Knicks ever do something like that, I think it would be a different type of celebration in the city. You know what I mean? Because even people who deep down inside, even I got some diehard Bulls fans that watch our Knicks and comment, and we have debates and discussions. And if they just like, yo, man, if y'all ever could do it, I'd be happy for you. So deep down inside, you feel like there's almost a Knick fan in everybody almost. If they not feeling sorry for us or want to see us, at the pearls at the bottom of the league, the doldrums of the league, you know, they secretly want to see us do well. I think. But yeah, I think my next Nick Brews probably has to be Reggie Miller uh in that 8 seconds just going ham. That was one where I was ready to go to the store. We was ready to go out and celebrate and talk some out, you know what I mean, out in the park to everybody how we on to the next, and in that 5 seconds, I don't know what happened. and that moment is like one of those. It's like almost winning a lotto, but one number away from winning.
That last number, you just waiting for that last number.
Yeah, it's right there. So that moment, and he obviously Reggie being Reggie and him being the nemesis, and you almost still hate Reggie now,
Do
you know, because he and Richard Jefferson have this thing where they like to rub it in their face, and they kind of picking up the villaindom when it comes to Nick fandom. I he's a nice guy. Don't get me wrong, but if I ever seen Reggie Miller, I definitely give him the Nick side eye. Like, bro, you're doing too much when it comes to Nick Nation. But he killed us. I really, had my ducks in a row ready to, see if we could get some hardware that year. And that moment, as many as there's been over the years, has been really probably one of the top ones. And it obviously being in the Garden made it what it was.
facts. Shout out to the chat again. I got a couple new guys. I got a couple guys back. Chop Low, salute. Darren Wayne, salute. I appreciate you guys for joining. Um, Danny, salute. Yeah, let's keep rocking. I'm excited. I'm excited to get past these nicks and bruises. But you got some interesting some things that I haven't heard in a while. I've been speaking to a lot of younger fellas as of recently. So you going deep into the archives
Um,
with it.
um, it's hard for me because when you've been around like we've been around, a lot of the stuff that's happened recently is kind of almost like you numb to it. But I'm trying to think of something recent. I think a lot of our miss drafts, in terms of not being able to get that pick, that number pick, because if you see the history of us, we always one pick shy or one pick short or away from that dude. You know, whoever we can go on from the Currys to the Amares to the Ron Artesses. You know, most recently, I think I was probably not one. I was not one of those that believed that we would be able to get the top pick. I do believe there's a little bit of policy and litigation in terms of where people pick. That's my own thing. But seeing how we got the third pick and not the second pick and ended up with RJ, who I love, absolutely love. I'm a huge RJ fan. Just looking at how, you compare who was drafted just before he was drafted and where he's, what I'm saying, where he was drafted after is like, but everything happens for a reason, man. When I say RJ has grown on me because I watched RJ when he was very young, coming up through the circuit, and to see where he is now, he's right where he needs to be. But I'm obviously having a job would change the dynamic of any franchise, just in terms of everything. You know what I'm saying? Because he's a transcendent talent. But that's one. I mean, Zion clearly, we got the better end of it because your best ability is availability, and he's on the sidelines right now. But you know, not having that one pick, and obviously seeing some of these picks pick after the guys we pick, the Donovans, the who's the most recent one that we had on my mind. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's one that sticks out that we draft. I think in the Kevin Knox draft, I thought we should have traded
I
up.
mean,
In the Kevin Knox draft, I thought we should have traded up. In the LaMelo draft, because I had an idea that Golden State would not pick LaMelo because of what they had, even though, my sons and I, we argue and debate about, should they have picked Wiseman or not. But I absolutely would have loved to have LaMelo because of his style of play, his IQ. I think it suits the temperament of the city, and it's a need for us. We haven't had a high IQ point guard navigate in this thing for quite some time. You're talking about maybe Derek Harper or goddamn Doc Rivers, maybe,
yeah. I mean, not for a long stint.
for a long, long time. Maybe Marbury, but Marbury is kind of like He's a point
he
guard, but he's a combo guy. He gets himself off first. He can do those other things, but obviously he's not ours. We had him short term. You know what I mean?
Hector says SGA. Did we miss out on him?
Shea
And the
Gilgeous
camera.
Alexander is another one. We can look at the list of players that are now all stars or trending towards greatness that we missed on. You know, we see there is some things. Obviously, it's hindsight 2020, but one of the things that I think that Walt Perrin, the current scout, is good on is seeing how players are able to project their talent into the NBA. Seeing how they're able to, take their game where it's currently at and how it translates into the NBA. I think Donovan Mitchell is a great example. You know, if you're looking at, this new draft, there's a couple players in the top 5 that I absolutely believe game is going to translate at the NBA level. No doubt about that.
We remind me
Ivy,
if we got
Ivy,
time we'll get
yep.
into that too. I want to highlight Big Fan Breezy, the Brooklyn Nets vlog.
I
I appreciate you joining.
love it.
Go ahead and keep drinking the tears. We play the Nets soon, so hit me on Twitter, and come on the show, and we could talk about Knicks Nets.
Yeah,
I have no problem, you know,
yeah,
laughing at y'all guys.
yeah. I often wonder how people can be from other cities or places and begin to follow or root for other teams, so to speak. I know if your team is at the doldrums, you tend to go and look for talent elsewhere. Even though my favorite players have never been Knicks players, I was a huge Dominique Wilkins fan growing up, and his brother actually played, at a stint with the Knicks. I was loving that. We had some athleticism, some the fake Jordan stopper, in that. But man, I'm a ride or die to the wheels fall off. Max and what he got going on disappoints me, because when the Knicks finally get themselves one, he's secretly going to try to creep back into the
you,
Knicks
you
graces.
it's funny. All of my favorite players have at one point become Knicks, and they all was past their prime by the time they got here,
I,
and it's so bittersweet for me because they were my favorite players before they became Knicks, and then we get them, and it was always like a little optimism in me, and then it gets shattered. So that's like one of my biggest bruises
that's
to
that's
this
one of
day.
my
Like that's the one
that's one of
that
my
won't leave.
that's one of my Knicks, bro. We probably have the greatest one-time Knick roster ever. If you could compile the best players that played the game, some of them are one-time Knicks, from Penny Hardaway to T Mac to Steve Francis to Baron Davis. Oh man, we could go on. Larry Johnson, Dikembe Mutombo. If you compile Kenya Martin, Jason Kidd, we could go on at one-time Knicks that we've accumulated over years that was way past they heyday. But I think Jason Kidd probably was my favorite one-time Knick because of what he was able to do from who he is with the group of guys that Woodson had. I thought he was the X factor in terms of X's and O's and being able to put guys in position to be successful, in his stint here. Maybe Stephon Marbury would be my next favorite just because Steph is his ability is amazing, but I thought he was very good in between the lines, the game within the game. He was very good at the intangibles, probably underrated because of his style of
Absolutely.
play, probably because of who he was. But I absolutely thought that we've had some great guys here, but I never felt like from top to bottom, talking about management to staff to players, that we were able to put it all together.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for the right person to do an episode debating whether he's a Hall of Famer because I think he's a 100% Hall of Famer.
Stephon Marbury,
Yes,
I would
yes,
agree. I think that his career as a collective, you can't deny him. You can't deny him. You can't
yeah.
deny him.
His numbers are there with Hall of Famers. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
He got some numbers.
there's nobody putting that has his numbers for a career that's not in the Hall of Fame. So I mean,
That's a
it's
fact. Yeah, the
yeah,
Hall of Fame in the NBA, you almost feel like almost anybody can make it, but it's so much litigation when it comes to certain things that you almost feel like it's a shame that certain players don't get in and certain players are in. But me, I'm not a hater. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, hopefully they vote you in the next go around.
yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So what else you got? You got more, or we gonna
My my last Nick bruise is probably John Starks 1 for 10 in '94. Who could ever forget that? That probably was my first moment I was actually stressed and depressed because I knew Houston had a better team than we did, but I thought that we had what it took to overtake them, in that last game. And John, like many streaky shooters, picked the wrong night. And I mean, if you want to talk about a player's worst game, that to me was probably his worst game, as a Knick. And that pained me because I was probably the biggest John Starks fan I knew.
as was I.
Yeah, I met John. John is a beautiful human being, and his story to me, I wanted it for him, for us so bad, that I still think about what life would be like if we were able to capture, that victory that afternoon. Yeah.
Facts.
So that would conclude my Knicks bruises. The Knicks was all of the little embarrassing moments in between the felonious contracts, the the ineptitude by the front office, the Isaiah years and some of the things that was happening there. I thought that was a travesty. Obviously, a stain on our image across the league. But nothing like losing in a championship series, to a team that is great or was great.
Yeah. I mean, it's better than losing to a team that you feel like you're absolutely better than. You know what I mean? Like like there's no reason we should have beat these guys.
Like the Pacers in 2013.
Yes, yes, the
Right.
mellow black. Oh man. Um, I want to address quickly. I guess the elephant in the podcast world. With Westbrook's wife coming out and making, you know, claim putting her claim out there of the threats or death wishes from fans, and how it's taking a toll on Westbrook and her family, their family, and then similarly with Randle's wife coming out and speaking about the podcasters and some of the fans and the narratives being painted about her husband and such. Um, what are your thoughts on it, if you have any? And I'll give mine as well.
Absolutely. I do think it's unfortunate that everything gets jumbled or packed into one suitcase and it's not separated, just in terms of how it's received, because we do understand that fandom is levels to it, just in terms of maniacalness, if that's a word, or uh, craziness. And you're able to separate, like when we were talking about Julius Randle being out with protocol and everything like that, there was a genuine wish for him to not be in the lineup, but not to the point that you had ill will physically, just in theory that, we could actually see something emerge. And so when
Mm-hmm.
you have a person that's, in search of success and they're not getting that success, there's the personality type that's going to go full on in a negative direction, whether it's a illicit comment, spitting, profanity,
Mm-hmm.
some of these things that we've seen, across the gambit in sports, not just in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the significant others of the players, I don't have, the way the wives, particularly or Wyatt, they're protectors of their mates. So they inherently are going to feel a certain type of way when someone is critiquing them in a I don't want to in a bad way. You know, you have to take the good with the bad. I do think that them being protectors of whatever's said, and so because it's the internet, a lot of times you can't have faces to back up these claims or these statements, and so if you internalize it, it's going to get the best of you.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot take personally what someone's comments, someone's perspective is in terms of your play, in terms of who you are, because most of us, we don't know these guys personally. We don't know you personally, baby. So it's not for you to take it that way. But I do think that certain lines shouldn't be crossed by fans, and I think that certain doors and boxes shouldn't be opened if you're a, 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 a mother, a father, a sister, a cousin, a relative of an athlete, because they put their talents on display. We don't want to say to be critiqued, but if you're in a public forum, it's up for public opinion. You know, I do think that Knicks fans should curb their enthusiasm just in terms of their approach to the wording or the
Mm-hmm.
gestures that they're making, because
Yep.
some of these guys, fans, grown men
Mm-hmm.
with grandkids and all that, have these takes that are immature. And I think that because you're behind a computer screen or a device, you're not able to, again, stand on that. So you got some weird stuff coming out, threats
Yep.
and all these things. But I find if I'm, the wife, or excuse me, the husband of an NBA wife, I'm trying to explain to my wife, hey, listen, sometimes you gotta just hit the off button, because some of these things out here, some people just say things, a lot of them don't mean it. And I guarantee you, if we was able to meet face to face
Mm-hmm.
or talk face to face, a lot of these things wouldn't happen. And we've seen
Yep.
Westbrook, in arenas and KD in arenas chewing fans out and going there. You know, my mom and I, just to close out, my mom and I went to a lot of the pre-games, preseason games in Boston. And those fans, as crazy and maniacal as they are, when we got in the building, they see us in our Knicks attire, and they are um, class. I don't say class personified in terms of how they behave towards their team, but when it comes to how they embrace other fans, how they
Mm-hmm.
embrace the game, I can see why their organization is tied to the success it's tied to, because the beat or the feel around the team is family oriented, and when you're in that organization, there's a sense of protection from all levels. And I think that New York being New York, LA being LA, it's a gumbo of personalities, of culture, of nationalities. You have perspectives and things coming from all angles, and not all of it is able to be disseminated, and all of it shouldn't be digested at the same meal, if you will.
Yeah, you made some great points. A lot of it, most of it, I agree with. Especially, I was gonna touch on the some of the actions of the fans, the spitting, like you said, the in our case, the cursing out, or the cursing with Trey Young, like um the lack of even recognition that there are children around you, whether they're right next to you, behind you, in front of you, rows in front. You know what I mean? They're there. Um, I mean, and if not, they're watching on television as well. So, there's a lot of things that can be said, can be done, that I would say are over the line. I wouldn't have a problem at all with even some stricter rules within the settings of the arenas, and things of that nature.
Um,
I Go ahead. You can interject.
Yeah, I was thinking of an example when Julius and the Knicks were playing in Philly, and one of the fans in Philly was speaking openly about the play of Julius and things like that, and I guess word got back to security that this particular fan was saying X, Y, and Z, and listening to his comments back on Twitter didn't seem so crazy, but he was removed from the arena, because of the player not feeling comfortable. And I think that, again, as a fan, you have the right to, but it doesn't mean you should. And so realizing that there's a human dynamic to it
Mm-hmm.
all, you have to be able to separate um, the emotion and your discipline from the product on the court. And I think that our players, they hear the chatter, they're well in tune with the beat, what public perception is. And I think at some point, good or bad, it affects their play and it affects their livelihood. And so one of the things I challenge Knicks fans to do is to, I want to say, be patient, because that's almost not going to be. But with our expectations and what we say out of our mouth, it could be filtered in a way that the player doesn't feel threatened. And even in Julius's case, where the organization or the fans don't feel like you're being defensive in a way that you have to use these tactics to be felt. So it's a two-way street. And so I'm sorry to cut you, but I do feel like there's certain lines that shouldn't be crossed, and I don't know what you do exactly to reprimand a fan that's bugging out. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's definitely a fine line with the whole freedom of speech. Like if you're critiquing the game, if you're saying you suck, you're a bum. I don't think that uh restitutes you being kicked out of the game, right? But as simple as putting in a no profanity rule, right? Where now it's as simple as that. You know what I mean? No profanity. Profanity, you are subject to get kicked out. You're taking your risk of being kicked out. It's simple as that. You know what I mean? Where
Right.
you're in my arena, you can't use profanity, you know, publicly yelling, like in that manner. Like, in a conversation between you and I, if you happen to say a curse, maybe that is different. But directed towards the players, the referees, things of that nature, I think that's over the line, and that's
I,
something you could regulate.
and I do feel I agree with you to a degree, but I do think that the words are not a manifestation of the attitude behind the word, in the sense that when players get called for fouls or
Hmm.
emotional about something, they curse referees out. They get technical fouls,
Good
and
point.
if they continue on, they out the game. You know, a fan, I don't feel like if he's, because some of these fans are actually more passionate about what the hell is going on the floor than some of the players. You know, you can see when a player is content in his place, meaning he's paid. You know, he don't give a damn if we win or lose. He's good, and
I,
so
I I think that's subjective, though.
in most cases it is. I do think that just in terms of how to referee commentary and and the back and forth between, you know, how a fan feels and what they're saying, it's tough. But I do think that I'm always a person to look at the malice, or the, not the action per se, but the heart behind the action. And so some of these fans, they lose themselves in it just as well as players lose themselves in the game. And if you're not able to look at the context of what's happening in real time, then it's hard for you to give a good uh, disciplinary action for that. You know, you kind of just go off what the immediate response is.
Responses, yeah.
But in some cases, you can tell when a fan or whomever is being outlandish or being disrespectful. You know, death threats. You know, wishing ill will, things of that nature. Those are things, again. You know, they happen very so often in our personal lives, and I agree that it shouldn't carry on or fester in pro sports.
Yeah, I told Sim off air, we was talking about it, and I told him they need to send them, however the death threat came, via text message. You know what I mean, instant message, letter. You need to send that right to the FBI, because you know what I mean. Whether it's a meaningless, like an actionless thought, or you know what I mean, whether you was gonna intend to try to really hurt somebody or
Right.
not. You know what I mean. Let that be a lesson for the next person who is exaggerating in their fandom. You know what I mean, like, or taking it too
Going.
far.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and just in the sense of the wives commenting or coming out, or even going at it with fans in general. I encourage it. I encourage it because, one, I rather the wife come out and say whatever it is she's feeling, or even be the microphone for the husband, than the husband coming out and responding, or having to defend himself on Twitter, in the media, press conference, whatever the case. Now, granted, that's if you're up for it and you can handle it. You know what I mean? Because you open that door, you have to be willing to take whatever is said back. But but some of these wives, cousins, brothers, they have no problem with that. They may be in the comments already, like prior to whomever the family member
You
is.
don't know who's behind that screen name. And I always, from my experience on the internet, keep it respectful, because I wouldn't say anything in the comment section or in somebody's DM or anything that I wouldn't say to them in they face.
That should be a
So
rule, but
yeah,
it's like,
that's the cowardice of platforms where you can hide behind whatever, hide behind your keyboard. You can hide behind your likeness in the virtual world, and I think that that's cowardly. But I do think that anyone who's wired this way in terms of emotion when it comes to the outside world critiquing should take a step back and realize that it's not a personal thing, that it's more like virtual heckling. In some cases in the arena in place, it's full on, but you have to be able to have a thick skin, and not everybody is built for that. Some people avoid circumstances and situations because of that uh
mhm.
uh that tug of war between the athlete and the fan, or the comments and things like that. They're just not built for it, so they stay away from it. And those are smart people because they know what they can take. It's go ahead.
That no, that's a great point. But it does bring me to this is actually my last comment on this particular subject, and I think we can move on, because a lot of people are saying, if you can't take it, or you don't want to hear it, or don't want to listen to it, like, don't watch it, don't listen to it, don't be in the comments, don't um watch the blogs, don't watch the media, and things of that nature. But I'm sure you're somewhere within the age range that I am, where we grew up before social media,
Right,
before this era of literally, kind of being raised in it.
right.
It's hard to tell someone, and I don't know her age, but I'm gauging by Randle being in his mid 20s to late 20s. They kind of grew up in this social media age and era. You know what I mean?
I get
It's
that. I
different
would
from
agree.
us. It's easy for us to say, I'm not watching that. You know what I mean? I'm not look. It's easy for us because we've been without it before. so
That's a fact. And
so
I
it's,
think
it's
that
it's hard to tell this young generation to not be on social media, not be in the comments. Not it takes a different kind of restraint that we are somewhat familiar with.
agreed. Everything isn't for everybody. And everybody's gonna take a comment a different way. It all depends on how you wire it. Like I said, is how you're gonna take to it. I do think that the younger generation, um, they're hyper aggressive, and they're very quick to issue their perspectives without thinking about what the repercussions are, because again, there's no reprimand for your comment. Maybe you get blocked, they can deal with that. I just create another account. You know
and
what I
and,
mean?
and sometimes that is an accomplishment for someone.
For a troll.
Such and such block me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they like
It's lit.
any energy is good energy for me, so I'll take it. And that's sad, but it is what it is. I don't, I wish that it wasn't that way, again, because I do believe that, respect above all and love above all, you know what I'm saying, is everything. And so when we learn to, and I wrote in one comic section directly to Julius about his actions that night, which I love, by the way, because everything that was going on with him,
Hmm.
his ferocity, his emotion, his ups, his downs, it really came out in that moment, if you will. And the fact that he was able to lash back out to the fans said a lot about who he is in terms of wanting to be successful. You know what I'm saying? And I saw it as that. It had me emotional because I really wanted to see and want to see that passion from him and the rest of the guys every single night, win or lose, because that is who we are. You know, in sports, that's what we live for, to see you blood, sweat, and tears, you know, fight for yours. And so it wasn't until that moment that I actually seen he wasn't resting on his laurels. It wasn't just a bag. Yeah. And so that comment is pretty much, you know, the OG stance on it. So you don't say anything you can't back up. You know, you don't. And so Julius, again, in that moment, allowed me to feel where he was coming from. And I just pray that he's able to grow from that moment and continue to grow, you know,
Hmm.
as a player, because he still has a lot of growth left within his physical game, but his emotional game and
And,
his IQ game as well at the age of 27. And if
and
he's, you know, if he's
he's
wise,
nowhere near a finished product.
nah, because most of these guys have been bounced around in these crazy situations where they didn't have stability. If you look at the Hall of Fame list of players, 90 to 95% of them were in substantially secure positions, from coach to organization to personnel around them. Whereas, you know, some of these guys that have these skills and talents are, you know, 4 and 5 coaches, six different teammates in a year. You know, it's crazy. I looked at the list of players that Melo played with in his short tenure, and Iman Shumpert and him logged the most minutes on the floor together.
Mm.
And you would have never, you know, surmised that because you don't associate Melo Anthony and Shumpert together. But you know, the consistency of having consistency around you yields great results, as seen in Boston. And I talk about Boston and Los Angeles because they have a mindset, Tone. Their mindset as an organization is championship or I don't give a damn. And so we right now are so battered and bruised and emotionally tampered with that making the playoffs is like finding a new boo that we could rock our way and be like, we good. You know, whereas these guys on the other side have been married for years. They continue to have kids, some celebration. And you know, that's my analogy. But we've been
That's great. That's let me just jump in real quick because I think you're absolutely right. But for us, as a Knicks organization, Knicks fans, Knicks culture, whatever, we haven't been that. So even to get to that level, it's going to be a process.
agreed.
So it's like you mentioned a little while ago. Patience is the most important thing from fans, but from the organization as well. Like because it takes time. You talked about Melo Shepherd playing the most minutes together. How many players Melo has played with over the years? The way to change that is to keep players around
Yeah.
and
And
let them grow into who they ultimately are gonna become. Otherwise, it's that's gonna be the culture. Players in and out, in and
I
out, in
I
and out,
agree. That's one of
and
my mhm.
that
I was gonna say that's one of my nicks that we don't keep talent. Obviously, the last rookie we signed back was Ward, Charlie Ward. And you know, these guys go to other franchises, come back here and kick our ass. Excuse my French. Salute. They come back and they kick our ass. We don't hold on to anything. David Lee was one of my absolute favorite Knicks, and it pained me to see him, you know, go to Golden State and everything like that because I understood man was a walking double double, and he did the intangibles. You know what I mean? And to see him ultimately become an all star, you know, for the Knicks, and then eventually be out was something that I struggle with. And I'm like, man, you guys, I don't know, you know, if it's a disconnect because the upstairs is a revolving door, which is, you know, obviously the effect on the court, which is the player rotations or the player personnel over the years being a revolving door. But, you know, consistency is the main thing from the top. And you already know with the person that owns the team from the day that he walked in, we haven't been able to get back to what any of the things that we knew that we endeared as a fan base, and as a unit, as a family, and so, and not so many words and ways, just his behavior, in terms of not appreciating what came before him. You seen
Mm-hmm.
what happened with him and him and Spike. Those things are absolute microcosms of the temperature around us, and sometimes it takes one leader or one voice to kind of put it all in perspective. And I never felt like, like I said, outside of Van Gundy and Pat, and there were small voices in the big picture because of their roles, but we never had that one mic or that true leader of men in the franchise to get us out of this hellhole. Because the mentality, like you said, of moving pieces across the board and everybody being a GM overnight, from fans to players, because we see even players with power that are making moves for their teams that aren't panning out because those moves are predicated on their success. And so when they brought Tom in, I thought that the culture setting and putting him in that place was a great discipline for the guys, but I didn't think it was a great spiritual move for the team and the city because of his rigidness. You know what I'm saying? But he's just one.
Elaborate on that,
So
if you can.
he's a Tom is a very stern, by the book, disciplinary guy. When I talk about spirit, there's certain things that we, especially when we play sports, that we do just to keep the chemistry going. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you look at the way he's doing things, just in terms of certain guys that he puts in a certain periods, how he's managing the younger guys and their egos, just in terms of accountability,
Mm-hmm.
those things manifest themselves and send shockwaves throughout the city, because we can see clearly from watching a situation what this situation needs in terms of a player being injected into the game for 4 or 5 minutes for energy purposes, or hiring a guy like, my guy was Mark Jackson, because of his spiritual connection to bring out greatness in a player, but
Mm-hmm.
also to have the moxie and cachet to handle all of the other things surrounding a team. Like, he's the guy at the press conference giving you philosophy, he's giving you X and O's, and he's giving you player morale in real time, and even his own. This cardboard cookie cutter response at the end of every game is frustrating, and it shows lack of awareness to where the state of the franchise is, just in terms of the temperature and the temperament, to a point that you either see now or you don't see what's going on out there, or again, you rigid and you used to doing things the same. I think the man is an excellent man to have on your staff because of his preparation. But when it comes to being a leader of men, I thought Mark showed how in his situation he was able to do that in Golden State. Is just that there were other forces and powers along with his perspective and his politics that didn't allow him to carry forward. But I think that Mark was the one that absolutely changed the culture, not, I'm saying, the culture, the mindset, instilling.
I mean, you're making a good point for I'm sorry. You're making a good point for Mark Jackson, which I think that's maybe we could do that another pod.
Right, right.
Um, but a lot of the things you're saying about Tibbs, like at first I wasn't even sure if you were pro Tibbs or you know what I mean, against him. I think now I think you're more against
I'm
some
I'm
some things about Tibbs, even though you have some good things to say about him,
I'm I'm
which is rare in you know the
I'm
Knicks
in
fan world.
yeah, I'm in the middle with Tom. He's definitely wore his welcome in my heart because of some of the spiritual things that he does to the younger guys, and us knowing where we are. Like, we are in a situation where we're not, title ready. And so some of these things that we take for granted, just in terms of, how he massages Julius's ego, just in terms of
Mm-hmm.
letting him feel like he can do whatever he wants out there with no, real accountability in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
whereas he openly displays this disdain for mistakes for younger players, and he pulls them from the game. And understanding that we're not in a win now situation, but you're coaching for your coaching life, probably his last stop before he's done. And so his perspective and his sense of urgency is heightened because of it. And so therefore that rope is shorter. You know what I'm saying? That tolerance for excellence or that margin for error is smaller. And as we can see, whether you're a rookie player or a veteran like Julius or whomever, you're susceptible to making mistakes and making mistakes on multiple possessions in succession sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And your attitude, your heart, and your desire to, again, I don't question his desire to, but how he shows um, how he needs to groom or grow a player from, I guess, teaching them through, allow them to play through it is one thing that, I worry about. And one of the things Obi said one post game was, or one game when you read his lips, he said, one effing mistake. And he sat on the bench and he was pouting
Mm-hmm.
because he understood, that's what it was. And even in the post game,
Mm-hmm.
he said, I'm out here and I don't want to make, mistakes. And you don't want to play like that. You can't play like that.
I tend to disagree. I think it's doing wonders for the development of the young guys, Obi included. Um, Obi's gonna have the toughest. He has to realize it's gonna be toughest for him. Arguably, our best player is playing ahead of you in your position. So no matter what, it's gonna be toughest for for Obi in particular. He has to look at it a little bit different than the other guys because
Because
the
of who's in
best
front of him.
player is directly in front of you, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, it might be one mistake. You know what I mean? You might not get the same multiple of chances than the rest of the guys coming up. But you have to if you understand that, I think he'll be fine.
I
Because theoretically it only means that you have to almost play perfect to maximize your time.
my pushback to that is we very rarely see perfect games from even the best of the best. And
Agreed.
obviously shorter ropes are in place for guys that have less experience. My thing is obviously, you can't coach or manage everyone the same. And that's the beauty, and that's what I'm saying about coaching.
Okay. I,
You have a way of
I
doing
mean,
things.
I think
And
Tibbs figured that out though. I think
I,
that's
I
part of why. I'm sorry to cut you, but I
mhm,
think that's part of why he gives Randle the leeway that he does, coming off a situation with Cat where his coaching style, his coaching method
mhm.
may have spoiled something in that relationship where he's like, oh, all right, it's the league's a little bit different now. I
Mhm.
can't, I can't do this, or maybe it's I can't do this to the number one guy on the team because ultimately, when the front office has to make a decision,
You, my
I'm gonna be the guy getting canned and not
yeah,
and not the player. I
Popovich
mean,
talked a lot about that. Some guys, if you let them go too far, they can get you fired. So I do understand that. And if his job is secure, like he has a 5-year deal, he's in year two in closing. He's shown a lot of different things. His ability to, um, again, now to adjust. I thought it was weird that it took 50 games in order for them to kind of push the pace, whether it was off of miss or makes. Because I absolutely felt and feel like when you have this collection of talent that they have, you have to have as much possessions as needed, in order to get a better result because of the volume needed from these guys because they're not really efficient. They're not. So, like I said, just in terms of just overall fit, I do think he's a great person to have on your staff.
I hear you.
I would like to see him, more of an assistant role because of his preparation, because of his dedication. I do think him pulling the strings or being able to have control of the pieces on the chessboard at this stage in his career, it's showing to be that the guys he's coaching against have a little bit more handle on things. But ultimately, I'm more dealing with the philosophy of how you handle your guys. And I was going to reference Phil Jackson because Phil Jackson was said to have these things that he would do for each player because he understood that he couldn't bring out the best in each player by managing or coaching them the same way. That he had certain tactics that he would use in order to bring out the best in them. And obviously, not every coach is Phil Jackson, and not every coach is Tom Thibodeau. But I do like the fact that, as an example, Steve Kerr took a bunch of philosophies in his coaching style and applied that to his own. And hence you have what you have there, where he's at. So I'm a firm believer in taking what works and applying it, adding your own style to it. And so I do see Tom. He's trying to adapt. Whether it's to our liking or not, I do see between the lines that he is making a degree of change out there.
No, no doubt. Unfortunately, I gotta get ready to go pick up my daughter, but it looks like I might not be doing the crossover tonight.
Okay.
So if you available and you want to do a part two and kind of finish this discussion, I mean, it was a bunch I really wanted to kind of get off my chest and kind of get your opinion on, and I'm sure you could have went on for like maybe another hour or so.
This is
So
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're free later, we could do a part two.
Would love to,
Um,
brother. You already know. Just hit me up, and
for sure,
I'm on.
for sure. Chat. I appreciate you guys joining me.
Or salute to the
Um,
chat.
hey, we're gonna try to get a part two going later on, maybe in like an hour or two. Figure out something. So come back, stay tuned. We're gonna get right into this whole finish this tips talk. I got some Randle talk. We gotta talk about is he back? Didn't even get into that. You know, RJ his performance. We're gonna talk about, you know, you actually
Touched on it
becoming
a
more
little
of a
bit.
fan of RJ as of late. We'll say that because you were so high on Ja. Um, yeah, I'm not misquoting you, right? Yeah,
Well, when I say obviously you for your franchise, you want the better player,
yeah.
at that time. But when I say he's grown on me, it's like accepting the fact that this is who we picked, and I love the fact that he's here.
Okay.
He has the tools, he has the attitude, he has the moxie, he has everything, and I love it. I was high on him from day one. I just was one of those it was unfortunate that it
Yeah.
took so long for him to get the reps that he's getting
Okay.
now. But no, from day one,
Okay.
once we had
So
three,
I had to ask. I don't want to misquote you.
nah, trust me,
I mean, but basically,
I'm
you happy with where he is
I'm loving
today.
it. I'm
So
loving it.
so we'll get more into that. Shout out to the chat, like I said, and yo, Black is time. Peace. Come back
Peace.
later.
Salute, guys.
You stay right there, bro. We out.